Hey folks, I'm here talking about Mars in Scorpio and Sagittarius, and also joined Ketu. We have currently Mars in Scorpio, and we see that he's going to be moving into Sagittarius in a couple weeks, by like early February, and then he's going to join Ketu there, and that's going to be pretty transformative, potentially explosive, and there's a lot to talk about with that. As you see here, I also have on the screen here a link to the web class, the webinar that I did last year, when Rahu and Ketu went into the axis of Gemini and Sagittarius. And if you didn't see that web class, then you should check it out. Again, it's free. There's a link, rahuketu2020.com, rahuketu2020.com. That's the link. And it'll take you to this page where you can watch that free web class. And again, it's actually, you'll see me talking about all the stuff that happened since last year when Rahu went into Gemini and Ketu went into Sagittarius. So it's also a good lesson in retrospect, because I actually made it like last February. So it's almost a year ago that I made it, in anticipation of this upcoming transit. And so that is really powerful to go back and see how this stuff works. And again, it's a web class you can go to. And again, if you go to rahuketu2020.com, it'll just forward right to that URL. And again, you can just reserve the seat. You can either watch a replay, or you can set up a dedicated time to watch it. And this is all going to be there so that you can also see how all of these shifts happened. And you'll see some of the things I talked about: spiritual insight and power when Rahu is in Gemini and Ketu is in Sagittarius. Again, I've been talking about this for much of this past year. Rahu in Gemini showing us the truth of things, and in all the details, all the communications, all of the words that people are saying, beyond just the fog of, well, I'm not sure what's going on. We're seeing the truth. Ketu through Sagittarius, again, trying to bust our sort of delusions and our kind of sort of blind faith. Ketu in Sagittarius is rejecting blind faith in our leaders, in our churches, in our institutions. Again, very Sagittarius stuff. And Rahu in Gemini is saying yes. And, because here are the facts, here are the details, here is the truth. So this started end of March last year. And again, the web class that I did, I started talking about that. You can see some of these subheadings: church scandals, gods, popes, and mysticism. Shown in this axis, big shifts we can expect over the next year and a half. Within that, I also include royalty, because they're also very connected with things like the church and the pope and all of that. And also scandals. There's been so many scandals in the spiritual communities, yoga communities, all of these institutions getting more and more pressure. And again, 2019 eclipses and intensity in Gemini and Sagittarius. So I talked about the 2019 eclipses, which includes the one we just had and the one we're just coming out of with the Ketu Sagittarius. So that's very new. And I talked about that back then. And then the nakshatra shifts, I track when the nodes move through the different nakshatras. It started, of course, with Rahu in Punarvasu. Then it went into Ardra, which is where it still is now. And then I put health scare. Ketu's connection with Saturn could be rough. Again, we're finishing that. But then I also mentioned redemption and insight, Jupiter, Ketu. Again, so talking about that, which has a lot to do with where we are now. A lot with where we are now is that Jupiter, Ketu, which is getting closer and closer now as we're into 2020. So those shifts are shown and discussed. And the other thing about that web class is it talks about all 12 signs. So you're still experiencing that shift. So if you don't know what the big shift has been for you since last year, this nodal shift, this axis has really implicated a certain part of your chart based on your ascendant. The spiritual insight and power shown when Rahu and Ketu is in Sagittarius. Rahu is in Gemini, Ketu is in Sagittarius. Important for you for the next year and a half. So again, that started last March, and this continues through September of this year. That's why I'm promoting this again, because if you didn't see this, regardless of the fact that I talked a lot about what happened in 2019, by the way, I'm going to be talking more about 2020 going forward with the nodes and stuff like that at different points. But the nodal axis, this Rahu in Gemini, Ketu in Sagittarius, that I talked about on this web class is current until September of this year. And that's what's affecting you. So again, if you're Capricorn, then this is affecting Rahu going through your 6th and Ketu going through your 12th. And it's going to continue affecting that way through this year until the middle of September. So this is absolutely very current for you to get your, to get your head around what's been your obsession and withdrawal, your obsession and your scrutiny since March of last year, March or April of last year. Rahu has been obsessed with something personally for you, and Ketu has been rejecting or withdrawing from something personally for you based on the houses that Rahu and Ketu fall in from your ascendant. That's why it's important, because based on the houses from where Rahu and Ketu fall from your ascendant, that's going to be the specific disruption for the nodal axis for you. So again, I put the link there again. This is the direct link to the website for the free webinar. Okay. So again, and I have been reiterating and reinforcing this transit since it happened, because it's been at the forefront of so many things that have been happening. Again, notice all of the shifts, all the political shifts, the rhetorical shifts in the world, in how we see things, again, not just with politics, but with things in your life, with your understanding of what's really going on, and seeing the truth of what is happening beyond what you want, beyond what you thought was true, beyond what you think is true going forward. And so we can see these things now being exacerbated and concentrated on, and we have since last year. So with that in mind, just looking over a few comments, I'm glad to see everyone. People say go 49ers. I guess they're doing well. I haven't looked. And I have my Rahu and Gemini, Ketu and Sag, so do I. So this, what we're going to be seeing here soon, like I said, is right now we have Mars in Scorpio. Mars is in Scorpio, and it's we're seeing this sort of sort of bone level intensity and emotional intensity, trying to really show us how emotionally strong we are, how much emotional control we have over ourselves, not trying to exert emotional control over others, wanting to concentrate and focus our energy and be disciplined. One of the reasons Mars empowers and is very empowering in Scorpio, again, is because Scorpio is a water sign. And water and emotions are in flux. They're the most undisciplined part of who we are. And in fact, as it relates to being disciplined, it's the emotions and the mind that is in need of discipline. We don't just need to be disciplined somehow. Somehow, what's discipline? Somehow I'm not disciplined. We're not disciplined because of our emotions, because of our feelings. And our emotions are how life feels to us in the moment. Life feels a specific way to you in the moment. That's what your emotions are. It's your heart, which is not your full feeling potential, or I should say your full feeling potential, the heart, the depth of the heart, interacting with the moment, because you have a spiritual, intuitive connection to life through the heart. And you experience that through the emotions. Each moment, it feels a certain way. Life feels a certain way to you. And based on that, you say yes or no. The emotions are kind of like the big eraser. You plan to do something, but then the moment arrives and you just say, well, now I don't feel like it. And somehow that's good enough. We never question that, but that's really how it is. We don't, as long as well, I didn't feel like it. Again, that's what being undisciplined means. It's in the moment. What do you do? What do you do in the moment? That's why Mars is the planet of discipline. Often you hear Saturn, and if you're watching this, try to concentrate for a second. Saturn is not really discipline, because discipline is in the moment. You need to be disciplined in the moment. Saturn is not about the moment. It's about the long term. Okay? So Saturn is actually about commitment. It's about, sorry. It's about your commitments in the long term, not the moment. The moment is Mars. I'm going to do this or do that. I'm going to eat this or that. I'm going to get up now or later. And it's Mars in the moment that does it or doesn't do it, based on what we know is right. This is right, and I'm going to do what's right. That's Mars, and that's discipline. Discipline is doing what you know is right, but you never do what's right in the future. You do what's right now or not, and that's Mars. Okay? This is why when we're not disciplined and we don't do what we know is right, we fight with other people about it. Instead of doing what I know is right, I'm going to tell you to do what I think is right or what I know is right. I don't do it. I just tell you what it is. And then I fight with you about what's right, even though I don't do it myself. This is why we've become a hypocrite. But discipline is Mars in the moment. Saturn is commitment. And Saturn is what looks far into the future and informs our discipline, because we say, yes, this is worth sacrificing for in the long term. So I'm going to do what's right in the moment. So they're similar, but they're different. And it's important to know the difference, not to quibble over the words, but the difference in the actions. But once you understand the difference in the actions and also even the concept, you realize discipline is Mars, which means having discipline is Mars. Saturn might give us discipline because it punishes us for not being disciplined before. So we then concentrate because we know, okay, I better stop doing this thing. I better stop smoking because I'm going to die of cancer. Okay, but that's not stopping smoking in the moment. The strength to stop it in the moment, because we know it's right, comes from Mars. The fear of not doing it and being punished comes from Saturn. But that's not in the moment. So think about this, okay? So this is why Mars is very powerful in Scorpio, and a lot of what we're going through right now is trying to discipline our emotions, because the emotions are the part that is very undisciplined. And this is the reason why Mars, again, he's exalted in Capricorn, which is about commitment, duty, sacrificing our pleasure in the moment for what we know is right now. So again, all these whole qualities of sacrifice, commitment, being humbled, remembering our mistakes, that's the quality of Saturn that exalts Mars and makes us disciplined. Of course, it's debilitated in Cancer, which is very emotional. I know what I'm going to do. This is the right thing to do. Now I don't feel like it. Totally an amalgam of Mars in Cancer, and why Mars is disciplined in Cancer, and why Mars is debilitated in Cancer. And by the way, you shouldn't make more out of it than it is. It's just one thing. There are plenty of people even who have Mars in Cancer and they're very disciplined. So it's not just one thing, but you look at that as an example, as an archetype of what are the qualities of Cancer that brings out the lowest quality of Mars. That's why. Okay, so now Mars is in Scorpio. Bring up the chart again. Now Mars is in Scorpio, and it has been for a couple weeks. And again, until early February, Mars will continue to be in Scorpio until like the second week the end of the second week or the beginning of the second week in February. Now, the reason this is so important, and I'm doing this now, is this is the most powerful part of for Mars in the chart. This is the most important transit because Mars goes from Scorpio, where he's the ruler, Sagittarius, where he's also very strong in Sagittarius because it's ruled by his friend Jupiter, which is about being idealistic and following what's right, the righteous path, all of that stuff, which again, the righteous path, we want to be able to find what's right and then do it. So find what's right, Sagittarius, then do it, Mars. And then he goes into Capricorn, where he's exalted. So when you hear me talk, and you've heard me talk recently, hopefully, about this transition, this transitional energy between Sagittarius and Capricorn, it's very easy to get all excited about Jupiter stuff because Jupiter's is the ruler of Sagittarius, and be all inspired and, oh, I'm so inspired, I'm so excited, I'm spiritual, and all of this kind of thing that's, it's excellent to feel inspired and to be learning and studying things. But it's all in some ways worthless if we don't actually practice it, which is why Capricorn comes after comes after Sagittarius, right? And in fact, Scorpio even comes before Sagittarius, because Scorpio is where we realize that we don't have a good answer and we feel vulnerable, triggered, and we have these irrational fears in Scorpio. So we go find an inspired teaching and teachers and an answer, a belief in Sagittarius. Then we have to put it into practice in Capricorn. This is an extremely pivotal section of the zodiac. From the insecurities and fears of Scorpio to the inspirations of Sagittarius to the commitment and effort of Capricorn. And the planet that's the most powerful through all of this is Mars. In fact, he's powerful in all three of them, very much so. So it really shows the importance of Mars in the spiritual path, the authentic spiritual path. And it also shows why one of the most important things we all need to transform is our anger. We need to take it out of that emotional triggering where we're undisciplined and arguing with other people and telling them what they should do, to something more inspiring where we actually realize, wait a minute, I'm the one that needs to learn something in Sagittarius, to the now I need to actually concentrate and put it into practice, not just learn it and be inspired by it and act like I'm some saint now. Now that I believe something, that means I've actually done something, which is what can happen when people get quote religious, because that's a lot of what Sagittarius is. It's actually more religion. In fact, you should also understand Sagittarius and beliefs are really, you can believe anything. You can believe in some great teaching, or you can believe, again, I use examples like white supremacy or any, they're all beliefs. All beliefs have a Sagittarius quality to them. There's no way to measure, whether the belief is good or not. And many times the beliefs can just lead to some kind of bypassing. Because now we're holier than thou. Now I found this belief. the first thing that happens, in fact, is, especially with the ego, is now I found this belief. Now I'm better than those who don't believe it. It's very easy to do it and to fall into that very quickly. Again, and we haven't practiced any of it yet. We just believe something. So again, this whole transition is very big right now. It's going to be continuing through, through April. It's especially the transit of Mars through Sagittarius and Capricorn through April. So big stuff. And this, when we start to look and see, especially about the upcoming transit of Mars through Scorpio and then through Sagittarius, we have this, I just put the banner back up of the free web class for people that maybe have just come in. Somebody asked me, I'll just post it again. This is a free nodes webinar. Just put it here again. And when you bring Ketu in, for example, and you get Ketu Mars, both in Sagittarius, again, it can bring this like explosive potential, and this explosive potential to, again, really create a spiritual explosion in you, authentic spirituality, where all of this stuff that's been happening in Sagittarius for the last year, since Ketu went into Sagittarius in March and joined Saturn, and then we had all these eclipses. Again, this has been trying to bust through your ignorance. Bust through your ignorance of that revolve around your beliefs. Because we all believe that the thing we believe is right. And it's not. It might be correct, but unless you're doing it and practicing it, and as long as you're still dealing with the impurities of the ego, all of our beliefs are filtered through our ego and all kinds of shortcomings and limitations. So Ketu going through Sagittarius is also saying, no, even if your beliefs are great, even if you practice them, they're still not perfect yet. Ketu is here to destroy your ego on some level, but certainly this illusion that you have anything completely figured out. Ketu is the absolute rejection of anything in this world, in your mind, that you could feel good about. Ketu says, no, I'm not going to let you feel good. I don't care if you've done 99% of it. That 1%, I'm going to nag you over until you get it perfect. And so again, if you're still buying into your religious beliefs or your beliefs about something, Ketu has been trying to smash it. And again, it's not just religious beliefs. It's political, it's social, it's relational, it's whatever it is. And again, how you can really see this affecting your life more than anything else is, where does Sagittarius fall from your ascendant? What's the sign? What's the house? Again, that's why I did the web class, because I talk about that on this web class, because you have to come back to the place that this lands for you and how this has been shifting and transforming your life. So the pressure on Sagittarius now is going to be this kind of pressure in your life relative to whatever this house is in your chart. So again, if you're a Pisces, this is bringing all kinds of pressure in your 10th house, making sure that your work is the right work, that your duties and responsibilities are the right kind, and bringing this pressure to really, get pure and clean about your duties and responsibilities, and you handling pressure. Because again, this is an area of life, given the fact that Sagittarius is there for you as Pisces, where you have a lot of beliefs and a lot of hopes and a lot of philosophies. Again, wherever Sagittarius is in our chart, we have a lot of beliefs, hopes, philosophies, maybe a lot of bypassing. And Ketu and also Saturn have been saying no, no, no since March of this year. And there's going to be a lot of this pressure even more when Mars enters Sagittarius here, the end of February, and then he moves forward through there. You see, we're going to have an eclipse, or I'm sorry, we're going to have a conjunction here. I already talked about this recently in this, this middle of February, this Ketu moon, this time here, this Ketu moon Mars, February 18th, 19th, and then a couple weeks later, especially around here, when we get moon Rahu with Ketu Jupiter Mars in Sagittarius around around March 3rd or 4th. Again, a lot of explosive potential here. And I already showed before the chart, the chart of 9/11. On 9/11, 2001, when the Twin Towers hit the buildings in the U.S., you had Ketu Mars in Mula, you had Jupiter Rahu Moon up here, and they were in Ardra Nakshatra. So you had this Ardra Mula axis really opened up at that time. And this was obviously showing the explosive potential of Ketu Mars. So there's definitely a lot of this explosive potential coming, especially in early March and through March as Mars goes through, like mid-February until you can see the end of March. Early mid-February until, I think it's the 29th. No, it's the 22nd. So March 22nd. So from February 8th or so till March 22nd, this Mars going through Sagittarius with Ketu there, really bringing out this nodal axis again. Again, this nodal axis has been extremely prominent since the end of March 2019. It's going to continue to be that way. It's going to continue to be that way in 2020, especially through September of 2020. So I would say that you would want to get a handle on how that's been for you, and whether or not it's been something that has benefited you, and what's really getting tweaked at that time. And as you see, I have this free nodes webinar. I'll put the link here again in the comments, but it's also easy to remember. RahuK22020.com also forwards to the web class. It's a free web class, and you can see how this will work, how this is going to impact your sign. And again, this is how we experience these things. We don't experience them in a vacuum. We experience them individually. We can see the collective. And that's why I talk about these collective things all the time, the politics or other kinds of social things. Just did a thing about the monarchy, and the things that indicate and show it. It's all within this context of the nodal axis, Saturn. These are two big shifts because Saturn's about a 3-year transit. The nodal axis is about 1.5 years. Jupiter is about 1 year. And so that's why I do these things. And so again, this will really talk about the spiritual insight and power shown in that axis for you for the next 1.5 years, starting from last year. So again, in some ways, this is a good revisiting of what has already happened. You can go back and look and see what I said before it happened. And I also talk a lot about the spirituality, the nakshatra shifts, what to do and why, the mystical cosmic stellar universe is shown. Shiva-Shakti here. So this is a very mystical, metaphysical section of the sky as well, because this is where these nakshatras, especially of Mula and Ardra, this is where the qualities of, I meant to do this. Let me bring this up real quick. The qualities of, a second. It's not coming in full. Is it? 1 second. Yeah, there we go. This is the handout from the web class. You see, I do case studies on 9/11, similar themes that we expect to be seen. I talked about some elections, recent transits through Leo and Cancer, and then Rahu, from Rahu and Leo, and then Cancer. So tracking the nodal axis, moving back and forth through time. Very powerful. And again, this is the handout from the free web class. Then the spiritual insight and power. I talk a lot about the Gemini Sagittarius lesson in general. Then church scandals, gods, popes. I talked about those things. Cosmic shifts. Again, this is a lot about the Shiva-Shakti energy, because this is where Shiva is Ardra Nakshatra, Ardra. And Shakti or Kali is Mula. So this Ardra Mula axis is where the plane of the galaxy runs. And it's also where Shiva and Parvati, or Shiva and Kali, are there destroying and transforming the universe. That's what this section of the sky is literally about. The one deity is Ardra, or of Ardra is Rudra, which is the fierce name of Shiva. Shiva as the destroyer, which is the one we usually hear him. And by the way, the name Shiva is actually a sort of title. It's like a greeting. It's kind of like saying Mr. Shiva, but it's like saying Mr. Rudra. Shiva Rudra. Shiva means auspicious one, auspicious Rudra. It's kind of like a salutation, the word Shiva, when you go back into the Vedas in the Sri Rudram. So that fierce form of Shiva is called Rudra, and that's the deity of Ardra Nakshatra. And then opposite that is Mula, which is related to Nirati, is the goddess, and it's related to Kali, who is his wife, who is in this frenzied dance with skulls and arms and all this destructive, transformative energy. So this is real powerful stuff. And again, of course, this is all the sidereal zodiac, of course. And I'll just state again, in case you're not clear, Ardra and Mula are 100% in Gemini and Sagittarius. It's these dual signs, this transformation, this wild transformation that happens in between, especially for Sagittarius. We can see clearly between Scorpio and Capricorn. These nakshatra portions define Sagittarius, just like the nakshatra portions define the entire zodiac and all of the zodiac signs. It's in every Vedic astrology text. And so you can see what I go over. I went over this eclipse that we just had as well, and this eclipse cycle. And then I talk about some other things like this. Jupiter also joined Ketu, the Redeemer, at the end of this year and through much of 2020. So I also talk about those things. So this is like the manual for the web class. So again, I offer that to you. These are very transformative times, and right now we're seeing it. Look at all of these fires that have been happening, even just with Ketu and Sagittarius and Mars and Scorpio. We could very well see some explosive things happening. All of the potentials for war around the world. Certainly, we've seen the Middle East, and what the U.S. president has done, and what Iran has done in response. And we also see, uprisings around the world. Again, in places like Iran and even in Russia and in other places. We've been seeing protests in Hong Kong for a long time. We have these impeachment things happening in the U.S., of Brexit in the U.K. There's so many more I can't even mention at this point. Everything has been it's like what you notice is everything is getting blown open. It's like upheaval and getting torn apart. This is what the Kali energy is, and what Mula energy is. It's uprooting, pulling out by the roots and blowing things apart. And Shiva or Rudra energy on the other side, which is where Rahu is also about blowing things apart and destroying the old paradigm, which is a lot of what happened. It's not surprising that this is what happened with Y2K, with what happened in the US with our politics and all of that after 2001, after the Twin Towers in 2001. It's like a whole new portal opened up. All that Rahu Ketu energy. Ketu was in Mula, and Ketu Mars were in Mula, and Jupiter Rahu were in Ardra. Now we have Jupiter Mars Ketu. All three will be in Sagittarius, with Mars and Ketu at least in Mula, and Jupiter still also in Sagittarius. So again, a lot of similar energy to that Y2K. Not Y2K, that 9/11 event, again, particularly around the middle of February and early March, around this time when the moon hits this lunation, or when the moon hits the Ketu Mars and also Ardra. One of the big things about it as well is it hits this eclipse point, because this is where the eclipse happened. It happened around in Mula, and the moon is going to pass over Mula, where Mars is also there, and Jupiter. So again, we could definitely see, especially in the Middle East, I have real fear that couldn't just blow up because of all of the religious fanaticism in the Middle East. Again, there could be a big thing with Israel and Iran, or proxy war. Again, one of the things that, aside from Iran literally attacking U.S. troops, let's say, for example, they have proxies. Hezbollah firing rockets into Israel, or all kinds of provocations. Assassinations are possible, especially in Mula. There are definitely assassinations possible. We've already saw an assassination with the U.S. president ordering the assassination of the defense minister in Iran. So we're already seeing that prophecy come true with assassinations. Benazir Bhutto was assassinated with a lot of Mula energy. I don't remember exactly the chart now, but I remember when it happened. I think the moon was in Mula. There was a couple planets in Mula when that assassination happened. So I wouldn't be surprised if these things come to pass, and we would see these things in a worldly sense, especially. So again, besides that, all of us are, there's enormous authentic spiritual progress possible now. Not just possible, but necessary to transform all of this heavy, intense energy into something that's not just being triggered because the world around us is changing. That's always the possibility. The possibility is always that we see the world around us changing, so we're terrified and triggered. And I feel the same way. We're all in that same boat, where we see the world change and we don't know what it means for us. But the world has always been uncertain. It's always been unstable. You've never had any control over it, and it could blow up at any moment. It's good to look at it that way, because we don't know how the sun stays in the sky anyway. We don't have any control or understanding actually of any of this. So what I was saying earlier about this Ketu going through Sagittarius, And this idea that it's here to show that no matter what it is that you believe, even the most basic belief that the sun will rise tomorrow, even that basic belief is a belief. You have no idea if that's true. You have no idea how it works. It's all belief. You just believe it because you don't know how anything works in the highest sense. Your mind literally does not understand or comprehend. No one's mind does. No one knows how any of this got here. That's why we become devotional. We become reverent. We say, thank you for having this beautiful universe that I do not understand at all, and giving me life and giving me the capacity to enjoy and giving me breath so that I can evolve toward consciousness, to know the self. Thank you. It's called devotion. And all those Indian practices, all those dharmic practices revolved around that. It starts with devotion and gratitude and humility. Surya Namaskara. Why do you think they call it Surya Namaskara? Why do you think they woke up and in the morning did Namaskara to Surya, who is the sun deity? Please, thank you for rising again. Thank you for not blowing up, destroying everything. Thank you for giving life. So then they would say the names of the 12 Adityas. As they would do the Surya Namaskara, they would say his names through each of the breath and all of that. In reverence. And again, because our ego our mind is so wrapped around the ego, we think we understand something of this world and we don't. Even the most basic things that we think we understand, we don't. We have information about stuff. We have information about stuff that we can perceive through our senses. That's about as good as it gets. Information about stuff we can perceive through our senses. And then the next level is maybe we can test some of that to see something of this world making some sense and working somehow. That's something like astrology. And that's a lot. That's a miracle. But it's only a miracle referring to a much bigger miracle that we will never, ever be able to grasp through our puny mind and intellect. And if you think you do, I would love to introduce a bucket of cold water to throw over your head. You don't understand anything. None of us do. We can perceive things. We don't know the bigger picture. We have to trust in the bigger picture. And I do my best to trust in the bigger picture. And realize that and again, sometimes, especially when I talk about politics or things that seem controversial, it might seem like I'm not seeing that, but I am. Like, for example, even the Trump or the other things that I don't think are, quote, right. I'm not saying they're outside the bigger picture. But situations show up in our life so that we respond to them. Again, rape and murder and terrible things aren't, quote, right. They show up for us to do something. Again, and that's my idea. Within a bigger picture, because that's what karma is. So I've heard, so I've read, and so it seems to be. But honestly, underneath it all, I'm also just doing my best. We all are. The law of karma does show, and eventually once we see it enough, we can understand that everything is working out for toward the right end, toward the right goal. That doesn't mean that karma makes us passive. It doesn't mean that karma, so to speak, means we should be a passive bystander and just say, well, it's all supposed to happen anyway and not do anything. No, karma shows up, or things show up for us to take action upon. That's what karma is. The thing showed up to compel us to do something. And it's in that process, the process of karma it's a process. It's how everything shows up to compel you to act. And even if you don't act, that's an action. Avoidance is an action. Everything is an action. So there is no avoiding that. That's the matrix. And it's that self-governing matrix, according to Indian thinking and Sanatana Dharma and all of that. these philosophies of Indian thinking that govern all of this. But again, how does it do it? How does it work? Why? No one knows. But again, it doesn't, we also have innate wisdom to be able to perceive these processes and know, yeah, I can see that that's what's going on here. And what that should do is give us reverence for the bigger picture that we can't really understand. It's this subtlety between being engaged and trusting, surrender and action. When to surrender, when to act, or to act and be surrendered at the same time. That's the highest yoga, is to be there, but here. To be in the world, but not of the world. Action in action, which means, or I'm sorry, like silence in action, which means inside you're still and established in truth while you're acting. Just like Krishna says to Arjuna, get in there and fight the battle, but be established in me, that which is deathless, that which is beyond this world, that which is incomprehensible. Just feel that thing that is not of this world. And that's actually not so hard. That's one of the easiest things to do. It's just a little trick. And it's a wonderful trick. It's just kind of tricking the mind. I'm really lucky that I started doing a lot of meditations early when I was very young. And I learned how to trick the mind. You have to learn how to trick the trickster, because the mind will trick you. So you have to learn how to trick it. You trick the mind. You give it a riddle that it can't solve. Just a little game, just a little trick. And it upends it. So you got to trick the trickster. And me as a Gemini, with all my Gemini stuff, I'm a trickster. So I can trick the trickster. No, so you got to trick the mind into not believing itself and give it a little riddle that it can't solve. And then just reflect. But the easiest thing is to just be present with the breath. That's why every spiritual practice, every spiritual tradition is about being present with the breath and the moment. Because the body and the breath are always present. You're always breathing, to make it simple. So if you're always remembering the breath, you're always remembering the self. You're not losing yourself in that. And then the breath leads you back to the self because it's connected to the source. And it immediately slows down because the mind, the ego, is not connected to the source. It's disconnected. So I'm talking about these things because this is very much a lot of what the Mars, Jupiter, Ketu transit is going to be about this year. Or I'm sorry, these next couple months. Mars is in Scorpio now. So he's in Scorpio now. We're going days, yeah. So we're here right now at about the 19th. So as you can see, as I go forward, next week he's there. The week after that he's there. Then by February 6th or 7th, he goes into Sagittarius. Then he goes into Capricorn by the end of March. And then he's in Capricorn. This in the exalted sign until early May. So literally between now and early May, Mars is really powerful, and he's really trying to bring the discipline, bring the practices, enough thinking, ideas, bypassing, thinking you know something you don't know. If you're not present and you're not living it and you're not being disciplined and doing what you know is right, you got nothing. Or you got a little bit more than nothing. A little bit more. Maybe you got some good ideas, some philosophies that make you feel good sometime. But then what happens as soon as they don't work, then you're lost. You don't have any skills. Believe me, I know. I do readings for people all the time who are spiritual and they believe all this stuff. And they're just triggered endlessly. about everything that could possibly go wrong because they're not practicing any of it. None of this is practice to them. It's just a bunch of ideas and philosophies. Again, they're better philosophies and ideas than others. Yes, and that's great. But the philosophies and ideas should lead to practice. We don't always get the situation and the opportunity with Mars being so powerful to put it into practice, to practice it. And again, what winds up happening with these transits is it gives the potential to do it right. But if you don't do it right, it creates a lot of havoc. So, for example, again, what Mars is going to get really powerful like this. He's going to say, okay, I'm ready to do the right thing. And then if we're not, we're going to say, now I'm ready to tell you how to do the right thing. I'm going to fight with you. Fight, 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 fight. Instead of practice, I'm going to fight. Instead of being disciplined about all the things I'm doing wrong, I'm going to be disciplined about all the things everybody else is doing wrong. Again, this is why Mars is very destructive, because we don't practice what we preach. We don't do what we know is right. We talk about it. So this powerful Mars for the next few months gives you the power to actually be disciplined. But if you're not disciplined, it's going to give the power to destroy everything in your life. That too. It's the same energy. And you want to understand this about astrology. You want to understand this about the energy. That's not just, again, this is the whole false choice about, well, is it going to be good or bad? Is it going to be good or bad? It's going to be what it is. It's always the range of potential. And the better it is, potentially, the worse it can be potentially as well. It's potentially the most catastrophic time of your life. If you're undisciplined, it could very much be one of the most catastrophic times of your life, destroying whatever the nodal act, whatever Sagittarius and Ketu and all that is doing. It could just blow it up and destroy it. Maybe, or maybe it'll get destroyed for you. Many times this is also what happens. See, what happens is if it's powerful, it's going to destroy something, but it's going to destroy the problem. It's going to destroy the problem. So you get more disciplined and you get more clear about, oh, okay, this was the problem. Let's destroy the problem. If it's not, it's going to destroy something else because you can't face the problem, or someone will destroy you because you're the problem. So what can happen is if your Mars is a certain way, it's difficult, or you're resonating a lot with what I'm saying about not practicing what you're preaching and doing all this stuff and bypassing, and this sign of Sagittarius is difficult and weak, and you're resonating with a lot of the stuff I'm saying, maybe people around you have been kind of supporting you and trying to help you through it. And again, what can happen is when Mars comes into these moments, if they're in the more kind of powerful, disciplined role, they destroy you. Their powerful Mars is going, okay, I can't deal with this anymore. You need to get out of here. And then you'll feel the frustration of your lack of discipline. And again, what you can do is you can respond by blaming them or looking at yourself and saying, you know what? It's true. I'm not strong. I'm not being disciplined. I'm a baby. I'm not doing what I know is right. And it can happen in all frustrations. All of these worldly frustrations mainly come from Mars. So people you're frustrated at your work. You're frustrated. Again, these are big places where it comes in. Work and relationships are kind of the two things. But again, you can notice at work, you're frustrated and battling with people or whatever's going on, and maybe, again, not disciplined or whatever it is in relation to this. Those who are more are going to start looking around at their life and saying, where is all the stress and aggravation and time wasting stuff that's going on? Yeah, this person, boy, I've tolerated that enough now. I'm done with it. And relationships too, or whatever it is. So this is how these things work. Is it good or bad? My answer is always yes. It's good or bad. So anyway, I always plan on these things being a little shorter, but I start talking about it, and I think it's interesting and beautiful and exciting. And I like sharing. So we went a little longer than I thought, but I think we'll just leave it there. Again, I'll put the link one more time for those who want to. I definitely recommend if you haven't seen this yet, if you haven't seen this web class yet, you'll really get a lot out of it. I talk in great detail about this axis, a lot about Gemini, Sagittarius, those two signs. Again, and these things have been so powerful in the last, since March, the end of March last year, been dominating our world. To just kind of circle back on that, see the things I had said, see how they play out, notice how they played out in your life, and also have me talk about it for your sign, because I talk about each of the 12 signs and this axis. And then the other things as well, a lot of the spiritual implications and nakshatras and stuff, all that is there. And again, you can just get it at that Rahu Ketu 2020. I'll put it here again, Rahu Ketu2020.com. And again, it's free. Again, I like to do these things that way because so people can really dedicate their headspace to it and watch it. And, there's a nice handout there and stuff like that. So anyway, I hope this was helpful for people, and share it with others if you enjoyed it. Take care.